Because if you want to actually do things, accomplish things, make a difference in the world, whatever, shape that takes, I have this mantra of mine: to keep it, you have to give it away.
Hello, this is Michael Matthews from Us for Life and Legion Athletics, and this is another episode of my podcast, of course, and this time around, I interview a very interesting dude, a guy named Charlie Engle, who has had quite a few ups and downs in his life, to put it mildly. I mean, this dude has run 300 miles straight without a break. When he first said that, I was like, what? Is that even possible? It is. He did it. He also ran across the Sahara Desert. He was once a drug addict and almost died, at least once that he mentioned. He was also the producer of a top-rated TV show, and just to round out his lively and colorful life, he also served 16 months in federal prison for a crime that he did not commit. Now, as you can imagine, a guy like this also has a lot of hard-won lessons and nuggets of wisdom to share that we can all benefit from, and that's what this interview is all about. And if nothing else, I think by the end, you'll at least have something to think about the next time you are tempted to say that you can't. Because let's face it, we almost always can. For example, I loved how Charlie dealt with being sent to prison for mailing loan documents that, unbeknownst to him, had been illegally altered by his mortgage broker, which he proved in court. So yes, what that means is Charlie beat the IRS in court because they were claiming that Charlie forged documents, and Charlie in court, he proved that it was in fact his mortgage broker and that he had no idea. The mortgage broker had swapped paperwork and was sneaky. But Charlie was still sent to prison because he did mail the documents that he did not know were fraudulent to the bank. Hashtag justice. Anyways, as you will hear in this interview, Charlie made the most, I think the absolute most of the experience, and by the end was actually saying a lot of sad goodbyes when he was being released. Oh, and lastly, I also need to give a big shout out to Spartan for inviting me to their World Championship out in Lake Tahoe, it was? Yeah, Lake Tahoe, California, which is where I interviewed Charlie. So they brought Charlie in because he is working on a very cool project with them, which you will learn about in this episode, and invited me to come be a part of a podcast event they were putting on and interview Charlie and a few other people. And they also interviewed me for their podcast. So thank you, Spartan. Very nice of you. This is where I would normally plug a sponsor to pay the bills, but I'm not big on promoting stuff that I don't personally use and believe in, so instead I'm just going to quickly tell you about something of mine. Specifically, my 100% natural fat loss supplement, Phoenix. It has sold over 100,000 bottles in the last several years, and it helps you lose fat faster in 3 ways. 1, it increases your metabolic rate. 2, it amplifies the power of fat-burning chemicals produced by your body. And 3, it increases the feeling of fullness from food. In short, it speeds up your metabolism, it helps your body burn fat more efficiently, and it helps you control hunger and cravings and maintain high energy levels. Phoenix also contains no artificial food dyes, fillers, or other unnecessary junk. And all that is why it has over 700 reviews on Amazon with a 4-star average, and another 250 reviews on my website with a 4.5-star average. So if you want to burn more fat every day and have an easier time sticking to your diet without having to pump yourself full of harsh stimulants or potentially harmful chemicals, then you want to head over to www.legionathletics.com and pick up a bottle of Phoenix today. And just to show how much I appreciate my podcast peeps, use the coupon code podcast at checkout and you will save 10% on your entire order. And lastly, you should also know that I have a very simple 100% money back guarantee that works like this. You either love my stuff or you get your money back, period. You don't have to return the products. You don't have to fill out forms. You don't have to jump through any other hoops or go through any other shenanigans. So you really can't lose here. Head over to www.legionathletics.com now, place your order, and see for yourself why my supplements have thousands of rave reviews all over the internet. And if for whatever reason they're just not for you, contact us and we will give you a full refund on the spot. Alrighty, that is enough shameless plugging for now at least. Let's get to the show. Charlie, thank you for coming on the show.
Incredibly happy to be here, so it's my pleasure.
Great. So tell us a bit about yourself. I mean, obviously I did my prep, but for the people listening, and which quickly gets to, you ran this across the Sahara Desert, which is insane.
Yeah, before that though, I was a drunk, so.
Okay. So well, did that help?
No, I like that. I like to start off with, no, and I mean, it is what's interesting about, the way I said it is that it's a direct line, from one to the other, but we'll work it backwards. So I did this, I had this idea as a runner to try to become the first person ever to run all the way across the Sahara Desert.
And how far is that, just for people
It's, who knew Africa was so big? It's, it was like 4,600 miles, it turned out.
That's
so
insane.
it seemed like a good idea at the time, like so many things. But, the run itself was this adventure that in a way became a real linchpin for my life in a lot of ways. But I began to tell people that I was going to be the first person to run all the way across the Sahara. And I had done enough things in the running and athletic world where people weren't going to just completely dismiss it, because while it was outlandish, it wasn't like completely out of the question.
Yeah.
Yet what I found was,
what was the most extreme thing you had done?
Yeah, so at that point there was a lot of, I'd run 300 miles at one time. There's a race called the Eco Challenge, adventure racing years ago, which was Mark Burnett's first big production before he created Survivor and Apprentice. So and those were like 10-day suffer fests. So they were 10 days of expedition running and biking and paddling and navigating and orienteering, and there were team events. So I always say that that's kind of where I learned, once I got sober, which talk about that in a minute, but once I got sober, that's where I really learned how to suffer, was in adventure racing. So when I had this idea to run across the Sahara, people did say though, to a person, close friends, strangers, anybody I was willing to tell, which was pretty much everybody, because I have a strong belief that saying things out loud gives them a much greater power quotient in your life.
Yeah, I think there's an individual component. Like there's some research that shows the opposite, that in some people, if they talk about their goals too much, it gives them basically a false sense of satisfaction, especially if people are praising them for something they say they're going to do.
Oh, right.
So they can kind of shortcut the process of doing it. But then there's research that in some people committing to it, some things publicly can increase stick-to-itiveness. Well, so I guess it kind of depends, use an individual.
In reality, of course, if you don't ever go do it, then you're, as my British friend would say, then you're just a wanker.
Yeah.
And you gotta, sooner or later you gotta.
Yeah, it's true. You only get so much praise until like,
right.
What
then you become the guy that always talks about stuff and never does it, or the girl. And so what I found though was this interesting dynamic, and I think it's that I felt to myself like every time someone said that's impossible, I did feel my heels digging in. Almost like a physical thing. And I realized the power, like I actually began to look forward to telling people so they could say, look, it's great and I'm sure you're a good runner and all that, but that's just not possible. It's too hot. You can't get resupplied. All the practical and rational reasons that this can't happen. And I did find that I let them take possession of the impossibility of it, and I took full soul ownership of what was possible. And it really made a big difference. And I continued to tell the story, and I think that's a lot of it, because it took a lot of money, it took a lot of effort. Ultimately, I had an Academy Award-winning director get on board, James Mall, and then Matt Damon comes on board to produce the project. You know,
how did they hear about it?
Yeah, so James Mall, I was working as a television producer for a show called Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Oh, okay.
So for many years, and I started on the pilot on that show.
I think my wife likes that show.
Oh my God, it was an amazing. You can admit to liking it. It's okay.
The only reason I say that is because we don't watch too much. If we watch any TV together, it's usually like a.
It hasn't been on for a few years now,
but she'll tell me sometimes, you know, that it
was the number
HGTV,
one. Absolutely, and it was the number one show on TV.
I would admit to that. I would
years.
Admit to like keeping up with the Kardashians.
And it was a good show. Yeah, it was a good show. We weren't all about the personality drama. There was some of that, but it really was about taking a deserving family and building them a house. And so it was cool to work on there. So because of that, though, I was around Hollywood. I'm using air quotes for those people listening, people. And a friend of mine who I swear, he just got sick of hearing me talk about the Sahara, said, look, if you'll shut up about this, I think I could get you a meeting with this guy, James Mall, James had won the Academy Award for Best Documentary like just a couple years earlier. It was a movie called The Last Days, and it was literally about the last days of a group of Hungarian Jews at the end of World War II, and they were in the Holocaust and so clearly this like really heavy, but heavy on storytelling. And so what I liked about James was, in my view, I didn't want to be part of a movie that was, because who wants to see me run 50 miles a day? Yeah. The numbers sound impressive and whatever, but really,
it's not there
he
is
again. Hey, there he is again.
I feel like when people want to get a view into my life, how does Mike Matthews live? I'm like, it's very boring, actually.
Yeah, they want
I wake up at 5:30 every day.
Right?
I don't do all I do is I sit in my cave and work. You know what I mean? It's not that exciting.
Yeah, they want this. And so James said, James, let's make I want this to be a real film. I want it to be a film about, sure, we established that we're running and we're doing this thing, but I want it to be about cultural exploration, and I want it to be about the people. And Matt Damon and I co-founded this water nonprofit that we had no clue whether anything would actually come out of it. Today, that water nonprofit is called water.org, and it's really the biggest nonprofit in the space, and Matt is still very much the face of it. And it all came out of this just crazy idea to run across the Sahara. And it is
why the Sahara?
It was a random thing. I had been doing a lot of racing, and so I will take a quick step back into addiction and sobriety. I have a background, for 10 years in my 20s, I really struggled with addiction, and it's not that unusual a story. There's a whole lot of extreme athletes that came from extreme addiction, and there's a personality aspect to it. There's an endorphin release desire aspect to it. There's a need to fill some, if you want to get really psychological, and the need to fill some missing part of me. And all those things are true to a certain degree. But ultimately, when I finally made a decision that I was going to die, and my first son was born, and if I wanted to be around for his life, and then I had another son a couple of years later, then I better get my shit together. And it needed to happen like right away. And as I always like to say, I had a choice between living and dying, and I chose running. And
suffering.
Yeah, suffering. But kind of like, so I mentioned a minute ago that the like eco challenge taught me to suffer properly. Really, addiction taught me to suffer. Like, there's no suffering like doing the unexplainable, going on you just get a raise at work or a job promotion or some event, and you go on a 4-day binge and piss away your money and ruin relationships, and like nobody would choose to live that way because it's a horrible, awful existence. So once I finally got out of that life, what I did realize though is the greatest lessons that I learned were from addiction, and were from, to be more specific, the suffering part of it, which most of it was suffering. But I was able to take that and transform it into action where it came to running and adventure.
And what is that lesson exactly?
Yeah, well, you know what? The lesson is that you have to do things in order to learn lessons. And that sounds, again, almost cliche and like I'm being flippant, but this idea that sitting on your sofa watching television or playing video games or whatever you might be doing is going to somehow enlighten you in some way is foolish, of course. And I don't think many people think that. They may be just not interested, though, in the kind of personal growth that can really only come from putting yourself into, and when I say risky,
uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable at least, right? Yeah. And so, one of the things I found that I was really good at, and I am still good at today, and my wife, we've been married 5 years, second marriage, said to me right after we met, she said, she heard my story the way you do when you're dating someone early and you're trying to be honest, but you're putting the best face on us. Yeah. It's all the dance, right? And she's like, man, you are really good at getting through stuff. Like, you know how to survive and get through. Do you have even the smallest clue how to just actually be happy? Like when there are no problems? Like, and I looked at her, I said, no, I have no clue. Maybe you could teach me, because like I'm comfortable with discomfort and it's still like a problem today. Like
How so?
Yeah, well, it's not that I purposely go out and like, I don't know, whatever, have a car accident or overdraw my checking account. Like I'm not trying to create chaos, but I am trying to do things. My life would, in theory, be easier if I took the 9-to-5 sales job where I could just make a good living and come home to my wife every night and run the occasional marathon on the weekend and whatever. Like if I had that life, and there are times when my currently chaotic life feels so out of control that I look at that and I'm like, man, I'd like to try that. And yet,
I think of, did you read the book Principles by Ray Dalio?
No, I know the book. I know the short version of the book, but yeah.
He talks about in there, and I agree with him, that you can basically, you have two ends of a spectrum. You have savor life, or like make a difference, basically, or or achieve what's the top of Maslow's pyramid. What's the term? It's self. Oh, brain's not working right now. But. Yeah. Anyways, the point is, you can choose if you really want to savor life. That's what we're talking about. If you have have the job, you make the money, and you savor life, and there's something to be said for that. Yeah. And I actually agree with Dalio's take. Is you have to really be honest with yourself as an individual. If that's really what you want to do, is just savor life. As long as you know that these things are mutually exclusive, you're not going to make a big impact in the world just because it takes too much time. It takes too much work, and you have to continually deal with a lot of burden and a lot of stress. It's just the way it is.
So many people get married.
Maybe you can stop at one point, maybe because he talks about that, but maybe when you're, at some point you can be like, all right, now I'm changing. Now I'm going over to the saver.
Well, and the best example of that is what? Retirement, right? Yeah. I'm going to wait until I'm 65 before I actually go out and live the way that I really want to live. I mean, what kind of freaking life is that? I just do not get that.
But in your case, do you think at some point you're going to be like, okay, I'm actually going to, I'm going to swing in the other direction a little bit.
When I'm living under a bridge, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
because I can relate, because I'm very much the same way. I just always want to keep going. I don't know. I don't want to stop. I just don't.
No. And it's not, savor to me is such a, it's such a scary, boring. Yes, there are times when I need to savor something because I am capable of being in the middle or at the end of a big project, even running across the friggin' Sahara Desert, and I'm already thinking about what I'm doing next. And I have this self-conversation of, how about trying to be present, dude? How about trying to just be right here, feel this.
You probably get the same thing with writing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Gosh. Writing
Once you get toward the end of the project, I'm like, I just want to get this done and start on the next thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, because I already hate what I wrote. I mean, not really, but it's just, once I read my own...
in a couple of years, you'll hate what you wrote. That's how it is. That's how it is with me.
Though I've only written one book. I've written a lot of articles, but I've only written one book, and it's a memoir. So it is my story. So I commonly point out to myself that it's not like I can be wrong. Like, it's my story. Like, I get to tell it the way I want to tell it. I wrote 700 pages for a 300-page memoir because I wasn't capable of self-editing. I found out that for me, I had to get it all out. Like, if I was going to tell a story of the Sahara Desert, like that story in a draft form was 100 freaking pages long. And while I'm not sure that the Sahara couldn't have been its own entire book, but that would be for the reader who wants to read about that. So the memoir, of course, is an all-encompassing thing. But I also, even in that, I tried to move the story along. So sobriety, I don't want to give away too much, but probably listeners can tell I am sober today and have been for over 26 years. So in my book, I don't drag people through 200 pages of a drunkalogue, you know, and all the shit that I messed up and whatever.
They can read like a Tucker Max book for that.
Yeah, exactly, which is highly entertaining. But you get the idea. For 60 pages of it, you're like, wow, that guy, I'm glad I didn't, you know, run into him in a bar, you know, or on the road. You know, it's this idea of, you mentioned books, and I'm sorry to be so rambling and all over, but I love this kind of free form. I'm reading a book right now called Anti-Fragile.
Exactly.
Yeah. What a mind-blowing, I mean, it's one of the first books I've read in a while that really makes me feel stupid sometimes. Like I have to, a friend of mine recommended it, and he said, I know you like to listen to books on tape or on you know, while you're running. Don't do that with this one. Buy the book, because frankly, if you're listening to it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, I stopped listening to audiobooks. Like I would listen to them. I prefer to read. I prefer to read a hard copy book, but digital is too convenient, and your highlights and your notes, or you can pull them all out. It's very easy, right?
No doubt.
And so what I would do is I would supplement I read first thing in the morning, and then at night I would supplement that with in the car. But I stopped for the reason of just like, because I mean, I was like me just being OCD. So if I'm hearing something and I like that, or I want to make a highlight or a note, pause it, wait for a red light, flip over to the Kindle. You know what I mean? So, but I actually got through probably an extra 20 pages a day. It was annoying, but it produced.
Well, you know what I do?
Now I listen to lectures and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I listen to? I listen to Ron Chernow books if I'm going to listen to something.
Ron Chernow's the guy.
Because the thing is, you know, Washington is 45 hours of listening. And quite frankly, I'm not going to read that book. It's too dense, it's whatever, but listening to it on a 6-hour run, I actually don't have to pay like so close attention to every single detail.
That's interesting. So you prefer that over music, huh?
I can't, you know, music, I get too, unless I've really scripted out the right kind of music, I'm too manipulated by the tempo of the music. And it actually does exhaust me at some point. I can remain engaged with the book, whereas I will lose interest in the music. So I mix it up sometimes, But back to, so did you read Anti-Fragile?
I haven't read Anti-Fragile.
Well, the idea you probably know behind it is really this, and I think again that maybe listeners will enjoy this idea, because this is what I've taken from it. I'm only a few chapters in even right now. Is this idea of being comfortable with chaos and randomness. Like when you get through something hard, when you get through a difficult situation, either by your own choosing, like something you've self-inflicted, like doing a friggin', you know, ultra obstacle course race, right? That's self-inflicted. I don't think anybody's here with a gun to their head. Like
you're paying for it. Actually.
Right, you're actually paying
for the
to
privilege.
be part of this pain. And so, and then there's things like going to prison or having a disease or whatever might happen.
Life.
Like you didn't choose a lot of these things. But if you can embrace whatever is happening with this idea that just surviving, I always picture like white knuckling, like holding onto the chair and just trying to get through it. If that's what you do and that's all you do, then ultimately at the end of whatever you've gotten through, your goal is to be the same person you were before it started. Like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to survive it. You're trying to just get through it. If you can find a way to take it to that next level and say, and like really open your heart and say, what am I going to learn from this? Like, what can I learn? How can I not just get through it? How can I actually thrive through it and get to the other side of it and feel like I learned, not that I learned some lesson, like some new nutrition tip. Right. It's about, am I changed as a person? And I think that that's what this book, you know, I'm still just getting into it, but I think that that's where a lot of it comes from, and that's
the premise.
Yeah, people want to like have perfect experiences. Well, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, or perfect lives. I see a lot of that where I live.
Oh my God.
We were just talking.
Well, and we know. You know behind their closed doors, they got the same crap that you're dealing with, that we're all dealing with, and because if you want to actually do things, accomplish things, make a difference in the world, whatever shape that takes, I have this mantra of mine to keep it, you have to give it away. And so whatever you're good at, whatever I'm good at, and what I'm good at is I've been sober a really long time, and I am actually good at sobriety. I understand in myself where it comes from, why I feel the way I feel sometimes around it, except the fact that I may not have all the answers. There are times when I need to not overthink it. I'm having a terrible day. Even after 26 years, what I'd like to go do is go do a line and drink a beer. I mean, there's a part of me that even after all these years, that addict is still in there going, yeah, let's go do that, but I don't. I say to myself, instead of denying even, I'm like, okay, let's shelve that thought until tomorrow. Well, I go to bed and I get a decent night's sleep and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, what the
That's the last thing
was I thinking? Like, I'm going for a run. This is a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Let's go get busy.
I think of talking about Chernow. I read his biography of Rockefeller, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Rockefeller, do you remember when he was saying that he never, so he was a teetotaler, he didn't drink, right?
Right.
But he had said, I'm paraphrasing her exactly, basically he never became an alcoholic because he never took the first drink, basically.
Yeah.
And that was one of his things, is like, he was obviously an interesting person, but he lived very strictly according to, Christian morals in his personal life.
Yeah.
And he was merciless in business, which was an interesting dichotomy. But I think of that, and actually I think of that myself. I don't drink. I've actually never even been drunk, which is strange.
My wife either. So I look at her like she's an alien.
And so people ask me like, oh, why, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I just never really got into it. And then the more I got around it as I got older, it just seemed like why? It's not a habit worth taking up, I think.
Dude, but you know why, though? You're a normal person, where at least in that regard. You may not be normal in lots of other ways, but I like my wife is a great example. She has a glass of wine. If she has a second glass of wine, usually by about halfway through that, she's kind of going, I've kind of had enough. Like, we need to go to a restaurant where she can order 1.5 glasses, because that's like, because I don't want to pay the $12 for the second glass. I'm like, you're not going to leave that, are you? Like, as an alcoholic, I'm like going, what is wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
But interestingly, like Rockefeller, I would argue that he probably was an alcoholic, because you can be an alcoholic and not drink, because a normal person doesn't actually have to go to great effort to control their behavior.
Right.
It's no skin off my wife's teeth she doesn't have to control.
Yeah, sure.
Like, all of a sudden she's going to have 2 bottles of wine.
Yeah,
like, that's
it's a switch. It's all found, done, whatever.
Whereas with me, I would have to control it like immensely. I still get the question regularly, couldn't you just have a beer? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely could. Chances are like pretty much 100% I could have 1 beer tonight and that would be it. I could probably do it again tomorrow night. I might do that for a year. But the day would come, 100%, no doubt about it, the day would come that I would not just have 1 beer, I'd have 100. And the worst part about it, though, is that in the meantime, I'm torturing myself every day with the thought of having the second beer or the third beer or whatever. Like, it's so much easier to just not do it.
Yeah.
If I could take a pill right now and not be an alcoholic anymore and drink like a normal person, no way in hell would I ever consider it. Early, and this is actually I'm answering a question you didn't ask me, but I ran like an addict. When I finally got sober at 29 years old, I ran like every time I went out that door, I ran as hard as I possibly could every single time, because I wanted to beat the addict out of me. Like, if I could have taken a knife and just sliced it out, I would have. Like, I thought that was poison. That was like cancer. If I could just get rid of this, then I'd feel like a normal person.
That was like the self-mortification. What is the whip on the,
absolutely.
The Silas belt?
Yeah. And what do they call it? Flagellation. Yeah. So, although I always made fart jokes when somebody said that.
Self-flagellation?
I clearly didn't understand what was going on. How would you fart on yourself?
Well, maybe. Sometimes that's actually a form of self-punishment.
Yeah, and I did. I felt badly enough about myself and the kind of person I was that it was a form of punishment, and it was also a form of absolution at the same time. And Anyway, to cut to the chase, after like 3 years of that and running like 30 marathons, and because clearly I wasn't an addict, right? I ran 30 marathons in the first 3 years. I clearly had addiction under control. I finally realized, though, that my addictive nature and that part of me was the best part of me. And then, in fact, if I was not an addict with those character traits and flaws, that I probably would be the guy sitting on the sofa with the game controller or the remote control in my hand, eating chips and watching TV.
Yeah.
Not
running the Sahara.
No, it makes me want to do things. And where I have to try to find balance is way overrated, in my opinion. I'm not seeking balance.
Yeah.
But I need to be aware. My wife looks at me every once in a while, and I see the look when I say I'm going to go do this race this weekend, or I'm going to go do that thing. She'll look at me like, really? Like, you've been gone like 5 weeks in a row or whatever doing this. And so that's I lose sight of the personal parts of my life sometime, and how I do need to just be. If I'm moving, I don't have to think too hard. I don't have to I'm busy. I'm doing stuff. I'm active, and it's all for this great purpose, whatever the hell that is. And so the thing that I still struggle with is finding a way to just calm down.
Yeah, and I can relate to that.
And be.
That's the same. Right. I've been in that place with my wife a number of times where she's like,
but what if I become irrelevant this week? If I don't do something?
Yeah. I mean, again, I guess I've just tried to build in enough. Take that, talking about work-life balance again. I don't think there's any. I think that's more of a mirage more than anything else. I think that for what you're talking about, to do things that matter, if you think on a big scale, it means your life's going to have to go way out of balance. But this is just me speaking from my experience. The only thing that has seemed to help is then swinging it back the other way occasionally and letting it go out of balance in the other direction. And so for me, I don't have much of a social life, so that is what it is. I don't care about that. I don't care about hanging out with friends or anything. I work with my friends, and that's about it. So for me, it's cool, my family, and swing it that way and make sure that I put enough there. But I know exactly what you mean.
Well, and and if
I fucked it up too much, my wife would probably leave me one day.
No doubt. Well, I mean, you need to be present to actually have a relationship, and I am reminded of that, regularly. And my wife is a very, she's a scientist and an amazing intellect, and she helps keep me. I hate the word grounded, because I'm not grounded at all, and she doesn't want me to be. She likes that part of me, but she also reminds me every once in a while that I occasionally make myself so busy that I don't have time to actually pay attention to whether I'm doing something that's actually useful. I love, even coming here to Tahoe, I actually love the Podfest, and you probably do too, because you get to do a number of these in a day, and hopefully have dynamic conversations that are different with different people and get it done. Because I don't like to say no to things. So out there in this sort of real world, I don't care if somebody has, 12 downloads a week or 12 million. I normally say yes, because I figure if someone has sought me out, I owe them the respect to talk to them. But I love coming to this because it gives me the chance, almost like an event, to just run an ultra marathon today.
Ultra podcast.
Yeah. And I love this conversation because this is different than anything I've done today or that I normally do.
Have you recorded an audiobook before? Did you record an audiobook?
Yeah,
for your
so
book?
my book, I had to audition to read it, but so Simon & Schuster published my memoir. I mean, the book has done really well, and I've sold a ton of audiobooks, interestingly, because runners do like to listen to books when they run.
Yeah.
And it's called Running Man. Very positively reviewed all over the place, including in the New York Times. And so the book has done really well, but it was funny. I got a phone call. I was actually in Poland for a wedding, strangely. I got a call, an urgent call from the publisher saying, we want to do an audiobook, and, but we need to know if you're capable of doing it. Can you audition?
Yeah.
So I literally had to get my phone.
Some authors, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't
voice
mean
doesn't
you can
work,
read.
and
Right.
it just doesn't
No doubt.
play.
I have an odd voice, or at least I'm told, and like dogs in the next county right now can hear me. Like they're like, you know, it carries over everybody else's voice. I drown people out. My wife has a very loud voice too, so we're very unpopular when we go to restaurants and things like that. People look.
Loudness works for audiobooks.
Yeah, it does. So I read for like 6 days, for 6 hours a day, you know, and it was fantastic. I loved doing it. This little studio in Asheville, North Carolina, and
so you liked it. I hated it. I just got done recording. I'm releasing 3rd editions of 2 of my more popular books, and it was probably about 80 hours in the chair.
Wow.
In like 3 weeks. I haven't done work in a long time that I got to that point where like, I fucking hate this.
Yeah.
By the end of when we got toward the end of the audiobook, I was like, I truly hate this. I can't wait for this to be
like,
to
I
be
really
over.
hate this. I'm not just saying I hate it.
Yeah, no. I was like I almost
actually
physically feel this now.
hate it, right?
You know what I mean?
I actually enjoyed it. I mean, I probably would get over it after 80 hours, that's for sure. But
I mean, not 80 hours of recording. That's what it took, because it served, for me at least, as a final draft as well. Because inevitably I'm reading and I'm like, no, I don't like that. Just hold on. And I would edit it in my phone, because the manuscript I'm working through in Google Docs, so I can do that. And that just made it added time. And
I do some writers, workshops, and I'm not my wife gives me a hard time when I say I'm not a professional writer. I'm not a professional writer only because it's not my main way that I try to make a living. I think I could do a lot more of it if I chose to, but I can't do everything. And so whatever. But I tell other writers all the time who are trying, especially young writers who want to break in and start writing articles. I'm like, if you sit down and you read it out loud to someone else, don't just read it to yourself, read it out loud to somebody else. And like, if you're embarrassed by your own language, or it's not your voice and you're like overwriting, my wife gives me the best compliment she ever gave me was that I have an amazing vocabulary. And because she's the smartest person I've ever known, and I'm a college dropout. I drank my way through college and couldn't get through it. And I do. It's because I love to read. I've been a voracious reader my whole life, and so I know a lot of really big words. But if you read my book, there's not like 2 of them in there, because I wanted to.
That's the essence of good writing, though.
Yeah, it's a plain spoken. I write exactly the way you're hearing me talk. Yeah. It's exactly the way I write, without as many run-on sentences. That's my voice. And so I did learn, just as you said, if you read it out loud to somebody, if you kind of overwrote a paragraph, you can feel it when you say it out loud.
The next level of that is having somebody read it to you, because then you see their reactions.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah, if they can't read it to you, if they can't get the nuance,
or if they stumble on something, and that's also.
Yeah,
I didn't even go that far, but reading it yourself, yes, that's a great tip for just improving your writing.
I do a lot of speaking too, so I do get sometimes the unfortunate opportunity to practice either in front of my wife or other people, and I know if I'm saying something that's either just disingenuous or I'm trying so hard to. I'm an anecdotal speaker and writer. I'm not a prescriptive person in general. I'm not an advice giver. I'm not the person saying, if you want to do this, here's what you should do. I would say, if you want to do this that I did, here's what I did. Here's how I did it. Yeah. And if there's something useful there for you, then great. And if somebody presses me and says, hey, can you help me with a program to run a marathon or whatever, then sure, I'll sit down with that person and I'll actually tell them what to do. But in general, I don't like doing that. But I like to tell them that writing is a muscle. And if you don't flex it, if you don't sit down to write regularly, or however you might do your writing, then
regularly
stand up to write.
If you want to have any hope, you have to write regularly.
And it's amazing how much better you get.
Absolutely.
If you're doing it on a daily basis.
Yeah. I look back at stuff. So I've written, between books and articles, I've probably written 1.5 million words. And I look back at stuff I wrote. So the second editions of these books that I'm updating, I wrote 4 years ago. And so I thought I could just go through, update things. And I start going into it. And I'm like, I hate all this. I start reading from scratch.
What's different?
I'm just a better writer now.
Well, not just that though, but the other thing is different.
My standards are probably higher now.
Not a trick question. Well, your standards are high, but you're different.
Yeah, sure.
So the story I always tell is about the Boston Marathon. Like, I've run Boston like 6 times, but it's from 1980, mid 80s all the way up till a few years ago, right? So it's spread over a long period of time. Well, guess what? The Boston course, it's exactly the same every single year. But those first couple of years, I saw like the ground, my watch, feet in front of me. I could not have told you one thing about the course. By the time I did the last one, I high-fived every kid. I stopped in Wellesley and kissed girls. I ate every orange slice out of some 5-year-old's hand who handed it to me. Like I had that experience. And Boston was no different. I was different. It's not that one was good and one was bad. They were just different.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a writing point. I think it's a life point. So if you were to look back on stuff you wrote years ago, and you probably, if you didn't feel at least I could do this better, that's probably a bad sign. Yeah. If you are considering yourself an actual, writer. But then I think in general, right? If you look back at yourself, and this is something that I try to remain cognizant of. Look back at yourself even a year ago, and if you think exactly the same, if you can't find one thing that you think differently about or one way that you are different, I think that's also a bad sign. And I speak for myself personally.
Absolutely.
Reading helps a lot with that as well, but also having experiences. If you go back to what you're saying, just go out and do stuff. Yeah. I think of Fight Club, right, where they joke about who wants to die without scars? You know what I mean? Yeah. He looks at the old, what does he say? Like the 1955 car, still in perfect condition. What a shame, right? Yeah, no, it's so true. And I mean, there's that old joke about, leaving, who wants to leave a pretty corpse? I want to have, used it all up. Do you still have, if you're gearing up for something, do you still have the initial, maybe it's just inertia? Like, do you feel that at all? And then once you get going, you're like, all right, I'm into this. Or is it for you, like you make a decision to do something and you just don't feel any inertia and it's just go, go, go?
That's a great question. And it depends on the project. It depends on what I'm doing. Again, you as a professional writer, among other things, it sounds like you have more discipline around writing than I do. And I am that guy as a writer who will clean the closet, wash my car. Like I will do everything that doesn't need to be done. Yeah. Because those things, it's important. Yeah. I get those out of the way before I write. Who could possibly...
At least you're not going through the Hunter Thompson routine.
Right. I mean, my joke is, who could possibly write with clean dishes in the dishwasher? Those need to be put away right now.
That's all I can think of.
Right, and so, but with a project, and I'll even move ahead to this big project that I have coming up. It's called 5.8, and this project is, ultimately, I'm going to go from the lowest place on the planet, which is the Dead Sea, to the top of Mount Everest.
Really?
Human-powered. So it's the lowest to the highest. And of course, it's a metaphor, but it's also, in this case, it's going to be made into a real thing. The idea being that we all...
Why 5.8? Maybe a dumb question.
5.8. No, I set you up to ask me that question. Thank you.
Okay, good. My ignorance made me look good.
The journey, point to point, no one would ever get this. And the point to point journey is probably about 4,500 miles. But in reality, and if I'm speaking to an audience, I always suck people in the same way. In reality, it's only 5.8 miles. It's 5.8 vertical miles from the shore of the Dead Sea to the top of Mount Everest. And the point that I'm really trying to make there too is that you and I, everybody else who's here in Lake Tahoe, everybody on this planet lives within that 5.8 mile tiny sliver of space that covers the planet. Like we're in it together. I always tell people, you may not want to be part of this project, but you're already in it because you live in that 5.8 miles. And my wife is very much, she's a wildlife biologist, environmental scientist, all kinds of fancy things. And we do care about the planet. We do a lot of things that I think are very positive, but we try very hard not to take the negative approach of saying, look at all the destruction, look at the people that are being harmed, because it goes just right over people and through people now. You see so much of it. So I take the viewpoint of looking at beauty. And what my goal out of 5.8, and by going from one point to the other, is to show people what they're missing and why protecting the planet should matter.
That's great. You know what I like about that too is it's easy to point out what's wrong in the world with people, anything. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and be a critic, right? Yeah. There's a Bucky Fulminster quote where basically it says like, I'm gonna butcher it, but paraphrasing, basically that point of, and it's easy to criticize, but that doesn't work. Instead of just trying to tear things down, you have to offer what the next thing actually is. It's much harder to be creative and offer a solution. Yeah. I think it's fine if you're going to point out what's wrong, if you can also offer a solution. And you could argue that there is a role for, there are the Voltaires out there, and that's what they do, is they point out the absurdity. We live in a clown world. Yes, it's true, run by clown people. And so I think there's a value to that. What you're talking about, I think, is much more valuable. You're saying, here's something I can do about it, and here's something all of us can do about it.
I want to take people who are, and I hate to even use the language, but like climate change deniers or whatever. That's fine. Be that. I always make the analogy of, if I get shot, like if I'm shot and I have a bullet wound, is the first priority who shot me, or is the first priority to save my freaking life? I can tell you right now, I'm worried right now about living. I want to get to the hospital. I want to get this figured out. And then maybe at some point I do care about, how or why I got shot or whatever. But the planet is the same thing. We can spend countless hours arguing about why things are the way they are, or we can just agree to do something about it, and to try to be, have a big vision. But I also am very careful about saying that this is a personal quest for me, and my why is not as satisfying to most people as maybe it should be or could be, because I don't pretend to know why. When I ran across the Sahara Desert, I ran 4,500 miles, and I ran 2 marathons every single day for 111 consecutive days without taking a day off. Yes, I started a nonprofit with Matt Damon that today is the biggest water nonprofit in the world.
Aren't you supposed to die?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, all the questions that I thought I was going to answer by running across the Sahara Desert, I answered those probably by day 20. By the time I was done on day 111, I had so many more questions. Yeah. And to think that it was like I was satisfied, you know what I was? I was sad. I was bummed that it was over, despite the hardship. And I was proud and relieved to have accomplished this thing with 2 teammates. All 3 of us made it all the way across, and it was this big adventure. But
and I would tell people listening, you don't have to run the Sahara to have that experience. I mean, I've had my own version of that experience. Just getting through that project I just told you about. Yeah. Where that was when I was done. Is when I was done with the audiobooks. I mean, it's a silly example, but it was a pain in the ass.
Starting a business, starting a family, doing a project like what you just described is your version of that. Same thing.
And you go through the same emotional experience, and there's an emotional curve to it. And so, and it's very fulfilling.
If you don't say "fuck this" at least 5 times during a hard project, or even while raising your kids, I got to tell you, if there's parents out there who they never hate their kids at least once in a while, and I don't mean really necessarily deep down just hate them, but it's like, for God's sakes. Yeah. Please stop doing that, whatever, or your job, or even your spouse. I mean, again, there's a difference between genuine hatred and just, if you don't hate some moments in your life, and I always say that we spend 99% of our time basically preparing for the 1% when things go wrong. And that's the whole point. Who we are is far more revealing or revealed in that 1% than it is in the other 99. The 99% is pretty easy in general. It might be tedious, it might be a little mind-numbing, and you may hate the monotony of it. Even if it's kind of exciting, there's difficulty in that.
You become desensitized to anything eventually.
Yeah, well, okay, running across the Sahara Desert. Yeah. I knew instinctively making this film. I'm like, I am not even remotely interested in making a film about running across the Sahara Desert, despite the fact that it's called Running the Sahara. Who the hell wants to see me run 50 miles a day for 100 and whatever straight days? Exactly. Hey, there he is again. Hey, there he is again. Hey, there. It's like, that would be absolutely boring. What's interesting is the interpersonal dynamics along the way. And I even told my running partners, I'm like, if you're going to yell at me, or if something's going to happen and you don't give the camera crew a 2-minute heads up to let them turn on the camera so that we can record it, then don't do this with me. because I want it to be organic and real. And ironically, the film makes me look like a bit of a jackass. Not that I'm not a jackass, but it takes, like, every time I did yell at somebody or whatever, that's in there. And so I'm kind of like the hero and the villain in the movie. And that's okay with me, because that's probably I'm probably 20% asshole and 80% pretty nice guy, kind of in real life too. But I think I want to share the struggle. Like, if I'm going to make a film, if I'm going to write a book, or an article, give a talk, do a podcast, why would I want to it's not like I'm like beating myself down and saying I'm a piece of shit, but if I don't share the struggle, or if I like represent that I've got all the answers, that is just such nonsense. And I don't really believe that anybody has all the answers. They might potentially have all their answers. They certainly don't have all my answers, and nor would I want them to. I need to do it myself.
Yeah. I think of, in relation to suffering in particular, I forget who said this, but basically there's a writer said, and this was kind of just a quip about writing in general, is the book could have been good if only the author were willing to suffer a bit more. And I think that there's something to be said for any level, or anything.
That's an awesome quote.
Yeah, I like that. It's stuck in my brain. But
well, people want.
But that's life. I think there's a lot to be said with what the work that it takes to make a relationship work, or raise good kids, or to build a business. It's not all suffering, no. But there are. If you're gonna, and this is, at least for me, I feel like I have high standards for myself, and I tend to hold other people up to those standards to some degree. It just is who I am. But that involves a certain level of suffering, not just with work, but in life. And, so I think of that, and I think that, clearly you are comfortable with going through that, but I'm sure it's paid off in many ways.
Well, there's also an art form, and some of it sure comes with age and whatever, but I am good at apologizing, because it's one thing, I do hold people to that same high standard. And like in the Sahara, I was out there running my ass off every single day. And if someone didn't have the same passion that I did, and I don't even mean I was a little unfair. There was my fellow runners, but there were crew people out there. And yeah, they were maybe they did get a paycheck or whatever, but still, there was a limit to how much shit I could give them, because they couldn't actually have the exact same passion for the project that I did. Mm-hmm. Yet I kind of expected that from them. And it wasn't until later that I did have to go make some amends, and I sort of realized
That's
I was
the quintessential CEO's problem.
Yeah.
Is finding people.
Yeah, and you know
that
what?
Really get it.
And people appreciate. They do appreciate most of the time. There's only a couple of people in my life that haven't forgiven me. And I actually recognize through therapy and through a lot of other stuff, that's actually on them. Yeah. That's not, I didn't murder a family member or something. We had an argument, right? And I might have called them a name, and they probably called me one, and maybe to me, that kind of stuff is so unimportant. And it is important that I acknowledge my responsibility in it, but I can't make somebody else do it. And if they want to write me out of their life, and that's we're not friends anymore or whatever, then I don't know. It was probably an argument well spent then. I can move on to other people. Yeah, probably. Well, how often do we worry about the people, 9 out of 10 people can like me, and who do I focus on? Freaking number 10, right? I give all my energy to trying to make that person like me, instead of giving my love and energy to the 9 people who already do. Yeah. And I think I do a better job these days, because everybody is a critic. Back to our critic thing. If you write something, you film something, you say something, and you put it out there in the world,
you're too personally attached to it.
Somebody is going to criticize you. Somebody's going to call you a name. Somebody's going to tell you don't know what you're talking about, or you're completely wrong, or whatever. And if you take all of that personally all the time, it just plays right into that person actually needs your response. And I think I've done a pretty good job through the years of not responding to negativity. I feel it sometimes, and I try not to read reviews.
That's funny. I do the opposite. I've read and replied to every single, I have, 7,000 reviews on Amazon. I've literally read and replied to every one of them.
And so if someone criticizes you, what do you say?
In some cases, let's take, a lot of one-star book reviews are kind of nonsensical. And so in that case, it's just, I have copy and paste responses, and then if they need to be customized, I'll customize them, right? But it's usually just along the lines of, hey, thanks for the feedback. I'm sorry you didn't like the book. Let me know if you have any questions or need any help. And that's it for that. And then I actually mean that. I'm not upset.
Well,
that's not me being passive.
It's the right path.
It's actually not me being passive aggressive, because I don't give a shit that this person thinks this book was dumb. All the information's on the internet for free.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they think. Fine, big deal. But I've actually gotten a lot of good feedback from 1-star reviews. Again, tend to be not very valuable, but 2- and 3-star reviews have been very valuable over the years, and that's where I've gotten a lot of a fair amount of. So I keep a running list of things that I want to change and update in the next editions of whatever books, and a fair amount of that comes from those negative reviews, because people will bring up valid points, or they'll tell me something. In some cases, at this point, I already knew it because somebody else had brought it up. Or it's something I didn't even think of. And I'm like,
well, and if you can take your ego and get it out of the way and actually hear what they said, maybe they didn't say it eloquently, but part of you knows, just like in most arguments that we have, part of you knows if there's a nugget of truth or even a whole lot of truth. And
I'll take that, and I'll acknowledge that, and I'll just ignore the rest if it's. And another thing that's always been for me is, I guess this kind of goes back to even at a young age, it probably sounds a little bit bad, but I think that a lot of people can't live up to their own standards themselves. So why the fuck should I care what they think about me and what I'm doing? Yeah. And so that's all I still am a personable person. I think I like people, and I don't run around judging people and I just enjoy genuinely sitting down and talking to people like this. But at the same time, I don't really care what they think about me and what I'm doing.
No, and I think that's taken me a while to get there, but I'm absolutely the same way. And so I don't know if you know this part of my story, but you know my prison story?
Yeah. I was on my list, but I figured we'll just jump in this and see where it goes.
We'll just touch on it real quickly. So I mentioned running the Sahara. So I had this movie where I am. If you had a PE coach, or if you were in the military, you're a policeman or fireman or a CEO, and you were in a position of authority, you understood a lot of what happened in running the Sahara for me. I was the expedition leader, and we had a goal. We had a mission. We agreed before the project that this was, we're going to get.
You're the standard bearer.
We're going to get from here. We're going to get from here to here, and we're going to do it whatever it takes. We're going to get the job done. And it's not like I was a jerk to people, all the time. But at the times when I didn't think they were living up to their part of the bargain, it meant that I wasn't necessarily all that nice to them. And I was.
Especially if you feel like they're jeopardizing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I also know that what it was a lot of times was fear-based. They actually were. And a brief example in the Sahara, we were not given permission to go into Libya until literally 3 days before we got there. So we had run 3,000 miles before we got permission. Well, at about 2,500 miles, we reached this center point of the Sahara Desert, Agadez, Niger. And it's in the movie, so I'm not busting anybody, but my teammates wanted to quit. And it was because of their fear. They were afraid we were going to run 500 more miles and be turned away. Like, what was the point? Why would I go ahead and do the rest of this? And my point to them was, that's fine. I'm going to take a Camel and a box of Snickers bars, and I'm continuing. And the reason is I can live with getting to the border of Libya, and if I'm turned away, I go home, and I know that I did everything I could do. Them letting me in is out of my control. I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was wondering whether or not we would have been let in for the rest of my life. Yeah. And of course, now I got the pleasure of saying, "See, I told you so." I tried not to say it, not too loudly, but and that made a big difference.
Where are we? Oh, that's right, we're in Libya.
Yeah,
that's right, where are we again?
There's Momar.
Oh, right.
But running the Sahara sort of put me on the map. But a lot of people, if you had a PE coach that yelled at you, or like if you didn't handle authority well, you probably didn't like me in the film, at least the way I was depicted. So flash forward a couple of years, I've been on Jay Leno and NPR and all the morning shows, and I got a book deal, and I got this and I got that after running the Sahara, and I'm given speaking gigs all over the place, and life is good. And it made me, so running the Sahara put me on the map, but it also made me a target. And so it's 2010, and I actually get targeted by a small town IRS agent who decides he wants to know how a runner can afford to take the time to go run across the Sahara. So he doesn't even audit me. He investigates me without my knowledge, and like 20 years of tax returns, and comes up empty. Like I have the memo still that says, I found no evidence of any wrongdoing. But he wasn't willing to let it go. This was 2010, and I had a.
Why is there such a mystery? I mean, could you just tell him, like, yeah, this is where the money came from?
Yeah, right. Well, all my money was on my tax returns, and it's not like I was making $1 million a year. Shit, it wasn't that hard to figure out where $75,000 was coming from.
And also, there was a movie
right,
thing here,
Matt Damon. You heard of that guy?
Yeah, he has a little bit of money.
He paid for it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I ultimately end up coming home from running errands one day, and I see out of the corner of my eye 6 armed federal agents come out of a coffee shop, and they handcuff and shackle me and take me to jail. And I honestly have I am at a loss, stunned, I don't know what's going on. And it's not until the next day that I find out that I am actually being charged with supposedly overstating my income on a home loan application from 2005.
Okay.
A ninja loan, basically a no income, this is a stated income loan, the kind that everybody had. I had a good credit score, but was overextended at the time. And, you could get a loan. This was an investment property, whatever. So I got a loan. When the bottom dropped out, that property ended up going back to the bank. So I had a foreclosure. I lost $100,000 of down payment. I lost my good credit. The losses that I already had far exceeded.
Did you overstate your income?
No, I actually didn't. I had a broker who.
How does that work? You go, what are you talking about? Here's the loan application.
So here's the crazy thing. At trial, I ended up I took this to trial, which nobody does against the feds because you're going to lose.
Yeah, because you're fucked. I mean,
right, 97%, take a deal because you're going to lose. So I went to trial. At trial, I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the mortgage broker actually forged my name the government's own handwriting experts, proved that it wasn't my signature. I ultimately was convicted of mail fraud. I was found not guilty of providing up false information, but guilty of mail fraud because I signed a closing package. I signed, where the red sticky notes are. Then there was false information enclosed that I didn't know was there, I didn't, whatever. And I, of course, put it in the mail and I sent it back. So anyway, the part of what I'm getting at is fair or unfair, whatever. Yeah. The predisposition of some people who saw running the Sahara, I get arrested and overnight, it's all over the country. Yeah, I told you that guy was an asshole. Yeah, yeah. So I had to deal with this hatred from a certain group of people. Even some people who liked me or purported to like me, and it was painful. It hurt. And the crazy thing is, all right, so this whole process takes place. I'm off the board of nonprofits that I started. I lose, $100,000 in speaking gigs overnight. I have no more sponsors.
Yeah, you're unpersoned at this point.
I'm basically purged from my own life. I'm just purged. I'm shat out the other end. So I go to trial. I'm found guilty. I'm sentenced to 21 months in federal prison. And that's coming up. I have to do it. This is 2011. So I report to prison on Valentine's Day, 2011. And I'm angry. I'm bitter. I put on a happy face for the people around me because it's once I got sentenced, I actually had 90 days before I had to report to prison. It's
it almost makes it worse, probably.
It's the word limbo in the greatest sense. What do you do?
Fuck it, we'll just go now, whatever.
Right. Yeah. What do you do when you can't have a life? People treat you like you've got a terminal illness and they don't know what to say. So I spent all my time actually making other people feel better instead of they didn't know what to say to me. I go to prison and I figure out very quickly, though, that, I'm 19 years sober. I've been through a lot. I know how to get through hard times. And I've run all over the world. And
Anti-fragile.
Right. And I've put myself, right. So this is my opportunity, right? In a weird way, I recognize very quickly that I have a choice. I can either let this be this incredibly bitter pill that I suck on for a year and a half, or I can figure out a way to make the best of the situation. And I had that conversation with myself. I'm like, fair or unfair, who I'm going to be in here is up to me.
Yeah.
And my happiness is up to me.
I'm sure you've read Meditations.
Of course.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I started running.
There's a chance to practice it about.
Absolutely. Well, I even read, oh my God. So Jack London, one of the first books I read when I was in there, interesting, was an old Jack London book called The Rover. And The Rover is this amazing, sort of true story. It's fantasized in a bit, but this sort of true story about him and being in an asylum and wearing a straitjacket. And short version is he teaches himself how to transport himself into adventures. And so he's in this straitjacket sometime, the warden wants him to suffer. And so it's a few hours, then it's a day, then it's a week, then it's weeks at a time, and the book goes off into these fantasies. Like he's living these adventures, like he's going off and he comes back and he's actually satisfied and not unhappy, and it pisses the warden off, of course.
Yeah, the best revenge.
Right. And so I take these lessons and I sort of say, okay, who do I want to be in here? And so I do what comes natural. I start to run. I run every day, and when we're in lockdown and I'm stuck in the cell, I run in the cell in place every day, sometimes for hours at a time. Wow. And people thought I was nuts, which is in prison actually not all that bad a thing,
This guy fucking sits and runs his cell.
I'm the middle-aged white guy. Like, don't mess with that guy. Something's really wrong with him.
Serial killer for sure.
Yeah. So, and I started doing yoga 3 days a week, like out on the softball field, which I don't recommend for people who are going to prison. The strange thing is, by the time I leave there, 18 months later, it's 21-month sentence, but you get a 15% volume discount, I always say. So at 18 months, I'm leaving. I've got a running group of 50 guys. I got 25 guys doing yoga with me a few days a week. I'm teaching, the federal system has no addiction recovery. It's crazy. 85% of the people are in there for some drug-related thing, and there's no addiction, there's no AA, there's no NA, there's none of that. Like, you could kind of do it on your own if you have some knowledge, but I taught classes and I taught nutrition. Anyway, so I had all these guys who were like, I had guys who lost 100 pounds or more. I had all these wonderful stories. And
a bunch of friends, they were sad to see you leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, I was sad to leave. But what's crazy is they thanked me so profusely. And these people, like, I changed their life and all this. And they thought I did that for them. And what they didn't understand was I didn't do it for them. I did it it was a purely selfish and selfless act at the same time.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to do this if you guys want to join in.
To keep it, you have to give it away, And so for me, the act of helping other people and getting out of myself and sort of feeling that satisfaction of seeing someone else transform and knowing that hopefully they're going to leave and take running with them or take a little bit of knowledge about addiction recovery or nutrition or even yoga and go home and do something with it. And prison is weird because it's not like college. You're actually not allowed to have contact with people, at least not in the short term, because you're a felon. So you can't go out there. It's not like you can keep in touch because technically it's a violation of, probation or whatever. And, so I got through it. And you know what? Just like Anti-Fragile, you just said it. I actually left prison a far better person than when I got there. Would I have ever in a million years have chosen it for myself? Of course not. Yeah. It cost me everything I had, which is an interesting way to put it. It cost me everything I had. So even when I got out, despite all the lessons I learned, for the short term, I started trying to recoup everything I had.
You're still, in other eyes, you're still a felon that just got out of jail.
Yeah.
Whether right, wrong.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to get all this back, and I finally am like going, why the hell am I trying to get that back? I'm actually a different person now. Go do new things. Go figure it out from this point forward.
And what is that? What are the new things now?
Yeah, and so the new things are actually, wow, I learned so much compassion for myself. You said it a little while ago, and it's the first time you and I have ever met, but I can tell you're an intense person, and you are, I'm sure, very hard on yourself. So you probably have great compassion for the world, for the people around you, but you probably have very little for yourself. Or I'm being wildly like judgmental when I say that. That may not be true at all. But
I think I'm strange in that regard, that's not how I am, but I do get what you're saying.
I could see you being very hard on yourself.
Yeah, for some reason.
You kind of said that, but
you
don't dwell in it. Some people sit in that.
Yeah.
And they like to, again, like almost.
For me, I think it comes to actually something you said. So yes, I have very high standards for myself. And I would say that on the whole, I have done a good job living up to them and meeting them. And I don't mind, there's the cliched stuff about failures the real failure is if you just quit and walk away, right? So you make mistakes and you learn. And I don't mind if things don't go the way that I wanted them to go, as long as I know that I worked really hard at it and I really gave it my best. Yeah. And in many cases, the things that I have done that and they have not gone the way that I wanted or weren't as successful as I had hoped, I've always been able to look at that as okay, what can I learn from this? Now looking back, so now I know that like I thought that my estimation of the amount of time and effort it was going to take to produce this result, whatever it is, I was wrong. So I can look back and walk away with, I can learn from that and be like, well, that's what it would have taken. Okay, I should keep that in mind. And I have a few businesses that have gone through evolutions, and I've now kind of learned a lesson of taking whatever I think on the more extreme end, estimating effort, time, or whatever, or pain that I'm gonna have to go through and then going, okay, let's be a bit extreme on this, and then let's double it from there, and then let's see how I feel about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So. So for some reason, I don't come back and go, on myself, and I'm not a very self-critical person.
I think writing has something to do with it too, because you understand. I mean, if you took away writing from you, like if you couldn't write, then where would chances are good you'd find another outlet. But my assumption is probably too, a lot of the angst or difficulties that you may have, they come out the end of your pen or figurative pen, you're probably on a computer, but, they come out on, that was another interesting thing. In prison, I wrote every day. And the other gift that it gave me was I read 150 books. I ran every day. Life was actually pretty easy once I just sort of embraced it. Yeah. And I wrote every day, and like a muscle, I actually, 2 hours a day of even just journaling. And like you were saying a little while ago, like I got a couple thousand letters while I was there, and I answered every single one of them. It was one of my commitments, even if it was a short answer. But to sit down in this day and age and handwrite letters and to handwrite a journal was so empowering. It was magic in a way. Yeah. Like it really helped me. And before I lose this thought, you made me think a second ago of, in addiction recovery, there's a great saying. It's one of the first ones I ever learned, and AA and NA have like amazing, but very, there's a million cliches that come out of the programs, but one of them is, that serenity, because we talk a lot about serenity. Serenity is the ability to be content with unresolved problems, because essentially our daily existence, my daily existence for sure, is filled with unresolved problems.
That's life. I always say you're always gonna have problems. I think hopefully we can have the problems that we have meaning. At least there's, what I mean? Hopefully we're not just dealing with bullshit problems.
But if you're gonna be unhappy because the body shop messed up the fender on your car that they were supposed to be fixing, like if that's gonna ruin your friggin' week, you need some therapy. Yeah. You need to start writing.
You need some real problems.
Right? Yeah, you need some real problems. Those are first world problems. Yeah. Go visit some place that's got real problems, and then tell me what yours are. Well, that was another thing about prison. I get to prison, I got 21 months. First of all, the first guy who showed me around, this little like 5 foot tall black guy named Pick and Roll was his name too. And I don't even remember what his name was, but that was what everybody called him, Pick and Roll. And he's like, Engle? He's like, how long you got here? How long you gonna be here with us? I said, 21 months. He's like, shit, you ain't even got time to unpack your bags. And he'd been there for 20 years, wow. And here's the other part. African American, he was there for an amount of drugs that I had in my possession 100 times, but I was a middle class, clean cut white guy in the hood driving, a decent car, and nobody messed with me, You know, and so I got a perspective of what life was like to be somebody else. So what, I'm going to complain about 21 months? Was it unfair? Absolutely. You know, I mean, the worst part about it is I couldn't figure out what kind of prison tattoo to get. Like, you know, I thought about like a fountain pen. Or
did you get something?
Like, no, I didn't. Okay. You get hepatitis. You get hepatitis. Unfortunately, is what you get if you do that in there. But that was the joke. You know, was that you know, what am I going to get? You know, I want to tell people. I'm embarrassed to tell people. What are you here for?
Yeah, no shit.
You know, overstating my income on a home loan.
But I didn't even do it. Actually,
right? It's like what? I'm like, I didn't want to admit that.
Well, you see, there's this investment property that I was looking at.
I've been there with these guys who looked at me like, what are you talking about? You know, but anyway, I did learn also, and this is my, I won't make it a long stump speech, but you know, the prison industrial complex, as we call it in this country, is an incredible waste of time and broken. And, you know, prison was meant for people that society was afraid of, you know, not people they were just mad at. And, you know, it's an equal opportunity thing between both sides of the political aisle. You know, you've got tough on crime people like Reagan, you've got Clinton, who actually put it on steroids. You know, Clinton kind of said, okay, if you want to do this, let's make a business out of it and make money. And so, you know, incarceration rates went up 600% while he was in office. And consequently, you know, there's just, it's a business, you know, more than it is anything. And if taxpayers...
Well, they're privately owned, right? A lot of them, or all of them? I'm ignorant about the prison system, but a lot of them, or all of them, are privately owned, right? Or a number of them
vast majority are privately owned these days.
Yeah. And it's government money, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's like...
It's our money. It's your money.
True.
I mean, that's the issue that I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
A dollar that, you know, you can be tough on crime. Why? Because some crackhead, you know, broke into your car and stole the stereo. Okay, you're mad at him. Well, he's going to go to prison for 20 years, or he can go to treatment. And okay, maybe he doesn't get it. Maybe it takes a couple of times, or maybe he commits a worse crime. Yeah, there is a chance of that, and there reaches a point where the guy does belong in prison, or girl. But from a taxpayer point of view, you know, for every dollar we spend on either prevention or treatment, you save $10 in taxpayer money. Like, that is an absolute, I'm not just making that number up. Like, that is a verified number. Yeah. The problem is you got lobbyists, you got people who are paying politicians, you know, because in this country we make sure that I always make the joke that at least in South America and a lot of other countries, they have enough decency to pay their bribes under the table. You know, we just allow our politicians to take money above the table. Yeah. You know, we pay them millions of dollars and allow companies and lobbyists to pay them money directly and pretend like it's for nothing, when in fact it's for their vote. It's for their, if you're the prison lobby, who are you going to pay? You're going to take people that are going to make sure that the prison unions stay strong and that prisons stay full, and that takes a concerted societal effort. And it's the easiest mark, because you know who society doesn't care about? Inmates. Period. Sure. Unless you have one in there that's a family member or something. Like, so anyway, that's my rant on that. It's just people, especially in upcoming elections, should pay more attention to tax dollars that are spent on, you know, infrastructure and on things that we actually need, and treatment programs that actually, who do you want to have live next to you? Do you want to have a person who came out of treatment and got some help and whatever? Or do you want to have a guy who just did 15 years and he gets out all pissed off and
mad at the world?
Mad at the world.
Yeah.
Is that who you want as your neighbor or living down the street from you? Or do you want the guy who's like, okay, you know what? I got a chance. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be better. Yeah. So there you go.
I do agree. So what's next for you? So you have...
Yeah, so 5.8 is the big thing.
Yep. And then you also mentioned
Spartan Trail,
which is in Virginia, right?
Yeah. So the first,
in my neck of the woods.
I am, and I got permission from Joe to say, and actually, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't like divulging some huge secret, to at least tease a little bit a new product from Spartan, which is Spartan Trail, and it is what it sounds like. It's going to be a nationwide series of trail runs and races associated with current Spartan obstacle course races. So For example, the first one's in your current home state in the middle of Virginia, in Arrington, Virginia, where on October 13th, there's already a Spartan Super and Sprint on that weekend. And so I just last week even designed a course, a 10K course and a half marathon course. They'll go different directions from the regular Spartan regular race.
That's all going to kick off from.
Yeah, but they'll start, the people doing the trail run will get a taste of the Spartan, vibe. So they'll get the MC there to take them through the chants, and they'll take off. And when they finish, they'll jump over the fire and, go across the same finish line. And the hope is twofold for me. And Joe and I have been talking about this for a while, but there's also another guy, Luis Escobar, a very well-known runner who's here. He'll be handling most of the West Coast, and I'm doing the East. And the hope is that we entice new people into the Spartan fold that are like, I don't want to jump over obstacles. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But I would come do a trail run. Yeah. And then maybe when they see the energy and get a sense of it, maybe they do jump in. But also for a lot of, generally speaking, Spartan athletes have somebody in their life that supports that lifestyle. And so maybe it's the husband, the wife, you never know which way it's going, or boyfriend, girlfriend, but whoever the obstacle course athlete is probably bringing somebody. Yep. And that person may not want to do an obstacle race, but they'll get out there and do a 10K. So it gives both people something to do over the weekend where they leave with a medal and a t-shirt and some memories. And I will say it will be a Spartan trail run though.
Which means it's not going to be...
no. If there's mud, you're going through it. If there's, Virginia, North Carolina is rocks and roots. That's the nature of our trails there. So, I'm going to make it challenging but doable and give people a little taste of what the Spartan sort of lifestyle. Yeah, because you want to feel like when you're done with a trail race or with an obstacle course race, you want to feel like you've earned it. And, my goal is halfway through either of the races, you're thinking to yourself, why did I think this was a good idea?
Yeah, because then the payoff is that's you got to get to that point.
Yeah, if you don't
suffer a little bit.
If you don't want to quit, then I've done something wrong, But then I want you to get to the end. We want, as we've said so much here today, share the struggle, and people can find more. That's a little hard to find on the Spartan because it's a new thing. But anybody who's ever clicked on a Spartan tab understands that you will be bombarded with advertisements for the rest of your life anyway. So trust me, we'll find you. You'll see Spartan Trail. And, for anybody that wants to find ways to buy my book, Running Man, or be in contact with me about sobriety or about running or anything, one-stop shopping, charlieengle.com. And that will direct you to all my social media, right? Engle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yep. Okay. So charlieengle.com. Right. Instagram is the place that I'm most active these days on social media. Yeah. So everything else gets posted to Facebook and Twitter, but I kind of I don't have the energy to do more than one thing. Yeah. So
I'm pretty negligent in my
in
my social media activities because I'm not personally into it at all, and the problem is not a good excuse because I should actually be making better use of it. I'm hiring somebody. The thing is I want to get somebody, because to do it right takes a bit of work actually in terms 100%. Of planning it out and really doing a good job.
It's about consistency because what I found as a consumer of social media, if there's somebody I really like, whatever, pick somebody big. Like I follow Gary Vee, and he's like, he's the man. He's got gazillion followers. One of the things that he does, it's so good, is he's consistent. Like every single day, I know I can count on something from him. I don't want to watch it or listen to it every day, but I know it's there every day. Like, right, I want a little boost. I want him to curse at me a little bit and tell me to get off my ass and go do something, right? And I don't even have to pay for it. So. But that's the way to find me, and I welcome questions or just inquiries or, about all these subjects. And hopefully with Dead Sea to Everest 5.8, there will be a production deal. So it will be available in a variety of different formats for people to kind of follow along.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, it's Mike again. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it interesting and helpful. And if you did and don't mind doing me a favor, then please do give this video a like and leave a comment down below. Not only do I like to hear from everybody and I jump in and reply to as many comments as I can, it also helps other people find their way to the show and learn how to build their best bodies ever too. And of course, if you want to be notified when the next episode goes live, then just subscribe to my channel and you won't miss out on any of the new content. Lastly, if you didn't like something about the show, then definitely shoot me an email at mike@muscleforlife.com and share your thoughts on how you think it could be better. I read everything myself and I'm always looking for constructive feedback, so please do reach out. Thanks again for listening to the episode, and I hope to hear from you soon. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by me. Seriously though, I'm not big on promoting stuff that I don't personally use and believe in, so instead, I'm going to just quickly tell you about something of mine. Specifically, my 100% natural fat loss supplement, Phoenix. It has sold over 100,000 bottles in the last several years, and it helps you lose fat faster in 3 ways. 1, it increases your metabolic rate. 2, it amplifies the power of fat-burning chemicals produced by your body. And 3, it increases the feeling of fullness from food. In short, it speeds up your metabolism, it helps your body burn fat more efficiently, and it helps you control hunger and cravings and maintain high energy levels. Phoenix also contains no artificial food dyes, fillers, or other unnecessary junk. And all that is why it has over 700 reviews on Amazon with a 4-star average and another 250 reviews on my website with a 4.5-star average. So if you want to burn more fat every day and have an easier time sticking to your diet without having to pump yourself full of harsh stimulants or potentially harmful chemicals, then you want to head over to www.legionathletics.com and pick up a bottle of Phoenix today. And just to show how much I appreciate my podcast peeps, use the coupon code podcast at checkout and you will save 10% on your entire order. And lastly, you should also know that I have a very simple 100% money back guarantee that works like this. You either love my stuff or you get your money back, period. You don't have to return the products, you don't have to fill out forms, you don't have to jump through any other hoops or go through any other shenanigans. So you really can't lose here. Head over to www.legionathletics.com now, place your order, and see for yourself why my supplements have thousands of rave reviews all over the internet. And if for whatever reason they're just not for you, contact us and we will give you a full refund on the spot.